May I remind members that as per the statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending a meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I ask you all to please use your cameras for the duration of the meeting. Moving on to the agenda. Can I ask Council if we can take agenda item 14 after agenda item 5 because Councillor Price has to leave the meeting? Are we all in favour of taking that agenda item? Thank you for that. That takes us to agenda item 1, attendance. Democratic Services will make a note of members' attendance in the meeting, but should you lose connection, could you possibly leave a comment in the chat bar on your return to ensure that this is picked up? Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Dominique, have we any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. I've had apologies from Councillor Giles Davis.
Thank you, Dominique. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Stella Harris, Monitoring Officer and Assistant Chief Legal Officer. Do you have any advice for members, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. With regard to agenda item number 9, the long-term plans for councils, the following members wish to declare interest as members of Cwmbran, Henllys and Croesy-Ceilog and Llanarafon Community Councils, as they have been specifically referred to in paragraph 4.6 of the report. So when I read your name, could you please confirm that interest? So the members of Cwmbran Community Council are Councillor David Thomas.
Yes, correct.
Councillor Stewart Ashley.
Correct.
Councillor Peter Jones.
Correct.
And Councillor Sue Morgan.
Correct.
The members of Henllys Community Council are Councillor Ron Burnett.
Correct.
And Councillor Colette Thomas.
Correct.
And the member of Croesy-Ceilog and Llanarafon Community Council is Councillor David Williams.
Correct.
Thank you. With regard to agenda item number 10, which is the Community Wellbeing Strategy, Councillor David Williams has informed me that he wishes to declare an interest as he is Vice Chair of the Torfaen Voluntary Alliance. So if I could ask Councillor Williams to confirm that interest, please.
Correct, yes.
And with regard to the motion, I have been informed that Councillors Joanne Gordon and Carl Gordon wish to declare an interest as they work part-time for Unison. If I can ask both Councillor Joanne Gordon and Councillor Carl Gordon to confirm those interests, please.
Yes, confirmed.
That's correct.
Thank you. And I understand that the leader also wishes to declare an interest as... Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Presiding Member, I'd like to express an interest because I'm on the negotiating body for the UK Local Government Association and with regards to the pay deal, so I think it's probably best if I excuse myself from that part of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'm not aware of any interests. Thank you.
Are there any further interests? Councillor Fiona Cross.
I'm temporarily not the chair of TVA, but I think I better declare an interest that technically I am, as Dave Williams is actually standing in at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
I'm Company Secretary at TVA, so I'll declare same interest.
Thank you. Any more interest to declare? Thank you, Member. That takes us to agenda item 4, confirmation of the Council minutes, the 27th of February 2024. These are starting on page 5 of your agenda. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as approved. Take those as approved. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, update on actions. Members, the updates on what has been done to implement our previous decisions start on page 59 of the agenda. Could you possibly indicate whether you have any questions or comments? Can I ask members if they agree to note the update on the actions then, please? Thank you, they noted. That now takes us to agenda item 14. Councillor Caroline Price. Can you move and explain your motion for us, please, as shown on page 165 of the agenda? Caroline, you're muted at the moment, sorry. Your microphone is on. No.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Now I can, thank you.
Thank you, sorry. Motion on local government pay to council, a fully funded proper pay rise for council and school workers. The council notes since 2010, local government workers have lost an average of 25% from value from their pay. Our staff are experiencing an ongoing cost of living crisis since 2010. The cost of living has risen by 60%. More and more local government workers have been pushed into debt, and their basic spending has overtaken their income, with 1 in 5 households having less than £100 to spare each month. This is a terrible situation for everyone to find themselves in. At the same time, workers have experienced ever-increasing workloads and persistent job insecurity. Across the UK, the local government workforce has fallen by 30% as a result of job cuts. This has had a disproportionate impact on women, with women making up more and more of 3/4 of the local government workforce. Local government continues to show how indispensable it is, but staff are increasingly leaving the sector for better paid jobs elsewhere. For example, in retail, leaving local authorities with a massive skill gap and vacancies in a range of key services, including social care, education and youth services. Local government finance is in an enormously difficult state, facing an estimated funding gap of more than £3.5 million for 24 to 25. Recent research shows that if the government were to fully fund the union's 224 pay claim, around half the money would be recouped thanks to increased tax revenue, reduced expenditure on benefits and tax credits, and increased consumer spending in the local economy. The council believes our workforce are public service superheroes. They kept the communities clean and safe, look after those in need and keep our neighbourhood towns and cities running. Without the professionalism and dedication of our staff, the council services our residents rely on would not be deliverable. Local government workers deserve a proper real terms pay increase. The government needs to take responsibility and fully fund this increase. It should not be the burden of local authorities whose funding has been kept to the core. The council believes should support the pay claim submitted by Unison GMB and Unite on behalf of council and school workers for an increase of £3,000 or 10%, whichever is the greater. Call on the Local Government Association to make urgent representation to central government to fund the NJC pay claim, working with the unions to present a united front in defence of the local government workforce, write to the Chancellor and Secretary of State to call for a pay increase for local government workers to be funded with new money from central government, meet with the local NJC union representatives to convey support for the pay claim, and consider practical ways in which the council can support the campaign. Encourage all government workers to join a union. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Price's motion, please? Thank you. That's seconded. Members, do you wish to debate this, or do you want to go straight to the vote? Don't see any hands up. All those in favour of the motion, then, please. Anyone against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Price.
Thank you, Chair.
Do you wish to comment further?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your motion this morning.
Thank you.
My apologies. I missed Councillor Slade's abstention, so we'll record that. That takes us to agenda item 6. We have one petition today, and the petition is in relation to a request for a dog enclosure. The petitioner, Mr. Dibble, is unable to attend the meeting today. Therefore, I have agreed to speak to the petition on his behalf. I don't believe Mr. Dibble is here now. So, the petition reads, we petitioned Torfaen County Borough Council to create a local Cwmbran-based dog enclosure park for larger dog owners, so they can exercise their pet with a ball and with a leash off to prevent intimidating the local public and having problems with other dogs. There are plenty of tennis and football courts for children and adults in Torfaen. An enclosure which wouldn't cost much to put together would benefit dog owners, making sure their pets get sufficient exercise without bothering the local public, children and other dogs, etc. It would greatly benefit local dog owners who do not drive, meaning the dogs get a secure location for exercise. Members, do you agree for the petition to be sent to the relevant executive member for them to consider and respond and report back? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. We'll send that to the relevant executive member. Takes us to agenda item 7, public question time. There are no public question times this morning, so we'll move on to agenda item 8, the announcements from the Leader and Chief Executive. Leader, do you have any announcements, please?
Yes, please, Presiding Member. First of all, at the weekend, we heard the sad news of the passing of Reg Han at the grand age of 100. I'm sure the whole Council want to pass on our respect and condolences to Reg's family and friends. Reg was a pioneer behind the development and life of the new town and the main mover behind the creation of the boating lake. And we'll be discussing a fitting tribute with Cymraeg Community Council in due course. Secondly, I'd like to thank Cumfordore School for inviting me along to their assembly to mark Stephen Lawrence Day yesterday. It was inspiring to hear the pupils talk about respect, diversity, anti-racism, and about the example of Stephen as a bright and ambitious young person determined to pursue a career as an architect. Next, I'd like to thank staff involved in the successful Unleashed business event run with Cardiff Capital Region last week, and which had over 150 people in attendance, and those involved in the jobs fair at Congress Theatre the week before, which was packed out with local people accessing support with job searching and developing their skills and training. I'd like to thank everyone involved in the new Inspire Cafe, which is a training base for targeted support for young people in Torfaen to help them access work experience and gain qualifications in food hygiene and customer service. It's part of a much wider programme to engage young people from music and art to mechanics and more. This has been developed with the funding from Shared Prosperity Fund and is aimed at supporting young people's engagement and progression into employment, helping to reduce the number of young people in Torfaen not in employment, education or training. Please support the cafe whenever you're in the Civic Centre for meetings. And lastly, members will also be interested in the new Torfaen Play Service facility in the ground floor of the Civic Centre. The facility will be a base to provide children and their carers, for example, newly adopted children and parent sessions, a play assessment space, family play sessions, expansion of the successful Lego Build to Express sessions, dads and kids groups, young carers play and disability groups. I think it's a great use of a previously underutilised space, so thanks to all involved in our always innovative and inspiring play service. Julian from Torfaen Play would be pleased to show members around after the meeting, so if you are around for 5 minutes after the meeting, then I'm sure he'd love to show you around on the ground floor. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements to make?
Sorry, nothing to add. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 9, which is the long-term plan for towns, Cwmbran, page 61 of your agenda. Bethan McPherson, Head of Communities and Renewal, could you deliver this report for us, please?
Morning, members. So I'll take you through the report. Okay. So the first report is around the long-term plans for towns, so presents an overview of UK Government's long-term plan for town funding. It provides details on the requirements and expectations of both the Investment Board and Torfaen Council as set out by UK Government, particularly relating to the governance, assurance and delivery arrangements that will be required. So on the 1st of October 23, a £20 million allocation for Cwmbran Town Centre was announced over a 10-year plan period in order to drive improvement and unblock the barriers to regeneration and development as part of their long-term plan for town proposal. The funding will comprise of both capital at 75% and revenue at 25%. The revenue allocation will enable a wider range of interventions to be considered and developed alongside more traditional capital projects. The investments will be centred around three key themes identified in 3.3, namely safety and security, high streets, heritage and regeneration, and transport and connectivity. These investment themes are further supported by a range of pre-agreed interventions outlined within the guidance documents, and a link to this is provided as Appendix 3 at the end of this report. The boundary for the long-term plan for Town Cwmbran investment area has been defined by UK Government based on a range of data sets, and again that's captured in Appendix 1 of the report. I would highlight that a request has been made to make some minor adjustments to the boundary, primarily to encompass areas of open green spaces immediately adjacent to some of the settlement areas that may be used to support and underpin some of the initiatives that may come forward, especially for projects such as antisocial behaviour and active travel. In section 4 of the issues and findings, we capture the requirements in relation to the Town Board. The UK Government have been providing clear guidance in terms of their expectation in the establishment of the board. There is an expectation that business and community must form the largest representation, and the chair should come from these sectors. The local MP and senior police representatives must also form members of the board, and political representation must remain proportionate, recommending up to 2 unitary authority reps. There was a requirement to have the board arrangements in place by the 1st of April. Information has been submitted to UK Government outlining our position here in Torfaen. There was a request for an independent chair and invited by the local authority with engagement with the local MP. Louise Jones-Williams, Director of Llantarnam Grange, has been invited and accepted the role of chairperson. Within the Torfaen context, consideration to a proportionate representation from the town and community councils has also been considered in respect of Cwmbran, Henllys, Coes Caerleon and Llanrafan, and a representative is awaited on that. Further to this invite, one has been extended to the local member of Senedd. This report, following engagement with the leader, recommends 1 unitary authority representation from Torfaen, namely the Executive Member for Economy, Skills and Regeneration. The nominated Torfaen representative will be reviewed on an annual basis with the option for representation to be changed if required. This will be done as part of the appointments to joint committees and partnership body arrangements. To reflect the position of Torfaen Council on the Town Board and the support and governance arrangements, amendments to the Constitution may be required. This report seeks delegated authority to the monitoring officer to make the required amendments. Currently, there are 18 members that have been identified and invites have been extended with the intention to establish a co-chair and relevant subgroup and working arrangements to support board activity and ensure there is an opportunity to engage other groups and individuals. In terms of the governance arrangements, again, these are currently being established in consultation with the Chair, and the intention that the main documentation will be ratified at the inaugural board meeting. And there are clear guidance again from UK Government in terms of what's expected, and that's set out within section 4.12 of the report. Upon board's approval of the documentation, which will be submitted and published publicly, we will then be entitled to release the capacity funding from UK Government, which will be a further 200k. Section 4.15 of the report provides details on the requirements expected from our Statutory Finance 151 officer in providing assurance on the operation of the board, particularly in respect of the financial administration and transparency of governance. Section 4.17 talks around the capacity funding. As mentioned, initial payment of 50,000 has been received, with a further 200k expected on submission of the paperwork in section 4.12. The funding will be available to support the Town Board and investment plan, which could include staff recruitment, running community engagement events, developing the town plan and sourcing the professional expertise to enable that plan to be developed. To support and coordinate the administration and activity associated with the establishment and ongoing delivery of the board, local authority resource will be required, and therefore use of capacity funding to recruit a project manager will be required and board endorsement sought on that. The plan itself, as we have set out in the beginning, is a 10-year vision which clearly identifies the strategic priorities for the town, with an initial 3-year investment plan required to be submitted by the 1st of August. This will be developed as a strategic document and backed by insights gained through engagement with local people, which is a key requirement from UK Government. Within Torfaen context, Torfaen is currently leading the development of Cwmbran placemaking document, which will provide some strategic context and list of potential interventions, further supported by key strategy and policy documents, which will be available to the town board to help inform and support some of their investment plans. This will not be an exhaustive list, and further work will be required to identify and develop other projects, particularly in the adjacent neighbourhoods. There are no direct financial implications to Torfaen County Borough Council associated with the report. However, careful consideration will be made regarding the operation of the arrangement and any initiatives taken to ensure that the VAT implications are neutral to the Council. And as a lead authority, consideration to and compliance with the Subsidy Control Act will also be required. A financial plan provided by UK Government is presented in Appendix 4 and provides a breakdown of the funding across the 10-year period. Primary risks associated with the report, primarily timescales. We've been required to sort of mobilise at pace, and as outlined, the establishment of the board was required by the 1st of April. We now intend to ratify that process at the inaugural board, which will take place at the beginning of May, with the plan submitted to UK Government on the 1st of August. That will be an initial plan, but will allow for iterations as we move through the delivery period. To mitigate the risks associated with timelines, we are looking to recruit resources to support the activity, utilise existing documents where they exist, and also draw on commissioning of professional services where required. The financial risks are primarily around assurance that the funding will be there in the long term, irrespective of any political change. We are in conversations with the UK Government to sort of firm up the certainty around that and build on the information that has already been received. Actions to be taken following this report are outlined in Section 7 and withdraw to 7.5, which would include consultancy support and consultation and engagement work to ensure we can hit the deadline set. Section 8 therefore sets out the 5 recommendations that are seeking Council to consider and approve today. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And Councillor Jo Gordon, do you wish to add anything?
Yes, please. Thank you, Presiding Member. Excuse me. So we've come quite a long way since the welcome and surprise announcement before Christmas to a place where we're now scheduling our first Towns Boards meeting. I'd like to thank officers for their work, particularly complying with the new way of working when setting up, establishing the new Towns Board. To reiterate, so we as a council, we're responsible for establishing the board, administrating the fund and performance management, whilst the board own the long-term plan and engage in the communities. The makeup of the board complies with guidance from UK Government, but I would think there will be opportunities further for elected members and community representation on the subgroups. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. I'd like to welcome this investment into Cwmbran, and I certainly welcome the boundary of Cwmbran. Cwmbran is very rarely included in any bid because it's a so-called 75-year-old new town. So I welcome the boundary, I welcome this report, and I look forward to the investment in Cwmbran. Thank you. Councillor David Williams.
Yeah, I echo those comments, Madam Presiding Member. I think, and I welcome the comments also from the Executive Member, because I think the thing that struck me was how we get that wider engagement and involvement. And I appreciate that that's going to take some time to go forward. And I appreciate that to a certain extent, or a large extent, we've been confined by the parameters that have been set by UK Government in terms of membership. But I would like to commend the fact that we do have somebody from the Youth Parliament, because I think it's important that young people's voice is fully present in this.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Just a quick one, I might have misheard, but you said in your earlier part of the report that the money was going to be used for more for some traditional council projects. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on what traditional council projects look like.
I think that was the comment relating to the capital revenue split potentially. So I think not sort of necessarily traditional council projects, more capital, so physical projects, infrastructure projects that perhaps traditionally we get funding for. I think it's less consistent that we get revenue to sit alongside that. So essentially what I'm saying is there's the opportunity to build out capital infrastructure projects, but to complement that with revenue initiatives. So they're very clear in the guidance around the opportunity of how we tackle antisocial behaviour, crime within our localities, opportunity for young people, etc. So rather than them standing in isolation, there's an opportunity for them to complement each other alongside and be developed in that way, which is quite rare, was the word I was looking for in terms of funding traditionally.
Okay, Councillor Stuart Ashley.
Again, as did you, Chair, I welcome this funding, and exactly the same words as you've said. It's rare that Cwmbran, in its 75th year, has had this one, but there's certainly a lot that can be done with it. I wanted to ask, is this money being used to lever other money in? Because obviously £20 million, although it sounds a lot of money, if it's the wider context for safety, security, high streets, etc., and transport connectivity won't go very far. I just wonder whether you're using it as a leverage. I'd not even mentioned the word canals, because that does strike one. It could be used to bring things in on that. But I just wonder what the government's thinking is. The other aspect of this is the government looking at our way of looking at our plans, or this obviously is something that sits outside of what the council. It's something to give a boost, I think, to what we're doing, and obviously Cwmbran needs that because of that 75 years of the new town, and it's a refresh. I just wonder how this sits.
Okay. So in terms of the funding, it's not explicit around match funding requirements. However, I think there is an expectation that where we can leverage other funding, we should be doing so. So we would be looking, as we look at each intervention in turn, we would look at whether that requires match funding and how we potentially draw on that either from our existing sources or new. It's also clear in terms of how we can utilise and leverage powers available to us, working with the police, etc., so make sure that sort of enhances what we're trying to do. And there is also a Towns Task Force that's been established to help unblock, whilst where there are traditional challenges in sort of delivering projects, that we look to utilise that task force to enable. So the approach is kind of multidisciplinary, essentially, in how we will deliver the initiatives. And then in terms of how it sits and aligns with our council plans and policies, as set out in the report, I think we've been clear when we've spoken to UK government around what we do already have in place, those documents that can provide a foundation. And actually what we'll be looking to do through the investment plan and the board is to enhance some of that. Obviously the plans and the work that we've done to date is traditionally built on statistics, on data, on engagement that we've already undertaken with the public and our community. So I wouldn't anticipate any additional engagement work throwing something completely alternative to that. So we would hope that it would be complementary and aligned to existing.
Councillor Lucy Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. This is a practical question, just understanding the establishment of the board. So I understand clearly that there's no financial implications because that money is coming from the funding, but there's going to be time implications. So, for instance, in 7.4 that we're looking at recruiting an officer. There's time that's going to be allocated to actually pull the board together to make appointments, which is a potential risk because of time pressures. I wonder if you could explain something a little bit about that, please.
So the timeline expectations are very tight between now and getting where we need to at the 1st of August. So we're currently drawing on officers within the regeneration team who are sort of supporting and coordinating that work in the first instance, working closely with the chair. they will establish that inaugural board, working internally with officers as well to make sure those governance arrangements are robust and aligned to what we have by way of council process, but that they stand then independently and reflect the town board arrangements. So that would be the resource in the interim. There may be a need to draw on commissioned services as well to help sort of bolster and add to what we've already got to make sure we can do the level of engagement and the development work that we need to get to August. And within that, we'll be quite clear in terms of the role of the third sector in facilitating some of that engagement work for us as well, because again, something UK Government are very keen to see is that our local community are involved in that decision-making process. So that will happen whilst we are then looking to recruit an officer that will then take up that mantle and provide that ongoing continuity and coordination for the development of the board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bethan. I don't see any other person wishing to speak. So I refer you to the recommendations that start on page 68 of the report at 8.1. Can I ask members whether they agree with these recommendations? Anybody against the recommendations? And any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much, Bethan. That takes us to agenda item 10. Stay where you are. Bethan McPherson, Head of Communities and Renewal, could you deliver the report for the Torfaen Community Wellbeing Strategy, which starts on page 93 of your agenda?
Okay, so the second report, is for the Community Wellbeing Strategy. And it wouldn't be pertinent if I wasn't to note that Dave's involvement in the process to date as well before I arrived. But essentially, the report is to recommend to Council that the Community and Wellbeing Strategy be approved and adopted as the Council's strategic framework for supporting community activity and promoting wellbeing. The strategy centres on an approach that recognises and champions the role our communities do and can play in the provision available locally. The strategy responds to the challenges and opportunities for strengthening resilience and community wellbeing across the borough. It recognises and seeks to address some of the biggest challenges we face as a borough, particularly in relation to health, where we are seeing a widening gap in health outcomes between the more and less affluent areas of Torfaen. It challenges our approach to prevention, which often does not always prioritise independence. Often, the formal services and interventions are put in place earlier than required when there is or could be more suitable responses within and delivered by our local community. It seeks to simplify processes and systems and enable a response localised to any given community. The strategy has been developed in partnership with the Local Health Board, Torfaen Voluntary Alliance and other local partners, and has been subject to extensive consultation, which is set out fully in section 5 of the report. The strategy sets out a new vision for the Council to put communities and wellbeing and prevention as genuine cornerstones in the way we design our services. It aims to empower our communities to be healthier, better connected and more equal. The strategy is centred on resilience, how people respond when this is challenged, and how communities can play an integral part in that response, with an opportunity to do more if empowered and supported in the right way. The strategy identifies 6 strategic objectives to create the conditions for building community resilience, and these are set out in section 4.3 fully, but are centred on leadership and planning at place, providing strong networks and community infrastructure, volunteering and community championing, accessible and appropriate early information, advice and assistance, and a whole system and partner approach. Section 5 of the report provides the outline of the consultation in detail, the engagement work that's been undertaken and the main areas of response, and the way in which then that information has been utilised and fed into the strategy that's presented today. That's included third sector engagement with our partners that was run with TVA in March, looking at key areas of the strategy and the findings there around volunteering, local priorities, and ensuring they have a suitable voice. Public engagement was run through a survey, which was run for a 2-week period in March, beginning of April, that generated 179 visitors and 112 responses to that survey. There was also then the session that was delivered with the Healthier Communities Scrutiny Committee. Therefore, actions to be taken following the report. Work to implement the principles set out in the strategy has already taken place and will continue, aligned to the key objectives and supporting plan. Section 7 also highlights some specific actions in respect of governance, monitoring and development of supporting material to further enhance and promote the aspirations of the strategy. Therefore recommends that the Council approves the Community Wellbeing Strategy 23 to 27 as the Council's strategic framework for community planning and delivery. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethan. Any comments from anyone? Councillor David Williams.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Member. Yes, I think it was helpful, and I declared an interest earlier, but I did attend that engagement event, so I'm aware of that. And I welcome the fact that the comments that were taken on board through the Healthier Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee were incorporated within the report. I would reiterate the point I made, I think, at the last council, is that when we have a public consultation, it's quite helpful to have an appendix that draws out the key themes, at least, of the responses. Obviously, you've noted how it's been incorporated in the report, but I think that gives us a level of transparency, and I echo what I said in the last council meeting, vis-a-vis council reports and public engagement. We need to see how that comes back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Janet Jones.
Thanks, Chair. Just say that we extensively scrutinise this topic in health, and I really recommend that we proceed with it and accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Dave Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I was just wondering if you could just give members a little taste on how the strategy plans on empowering the community to engage more with the council.
So I think there's a range of approaches that we're looking at. Within the team, we have a new community resilience team that's doing quite a lot of work around empowering local community through capacity building. So looking at where are those individuals, those residents that want to be involved in this process, that are already taking part in lots of activity, and rather try and step in to sort of deliver those programmes. How can we better support them? So what else do they need? Is that potentially funding, but actually equally important, what training could we be looking at? How could we provide mentorship potentially, support to enable them to have the skills? Ultimately, what we're trying to deliver is sustainability, so that it doesn't just fall away if the officer resource is not there. We're also looking at how we can strengthen sort of community championing and that informal volunteering. So those key people in our communities that we all know, who know everybody, who know everything, how do we better use them to get that information out there in a way that's accessible to people, especially where digital is not the solution. We are also looking to grow things like the Connect platform, so a platform hosted by TVA, but that we would collectively like to see drive as that digital solution, so that people looking for activities, looking to volunteer, looking for information can do so, and that platform becomes a very reliable source, because again, there's nothing worse than if you're looking for information, either you can't find it or you find it and it's not reliable, it's not up to date. So it's how do we get into that position? And then working with our community groups as well to sort of see how can they better deliver that early intervention. What does it look like, rather than us constantly stepping in? We'll also be looking at our own sort of services and front door. Hopefully that gives a flavour.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate that, the answer, and it's clearly been well thought out, so I look forward to seeing this moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Stuart Ashley.
I must admit, I like this. So those of us that have been in community and voluntary organisations for years, and I started off as a paid worker for an organisation called TRACK, which is still going with Sue Myson. It's great to see fruition of this approach within the council. It wasn't always so, and you've embedded it. I remember Dave Leach coming down to Community Council and working through this process. And that's the point, working through the process as a partnership, linking up what we've got. Because you've got an awful number of organisations out there, as Dave said, working with TVA, Dave and Fiona on that one with Richard you know, it's all about partnership and linkage. And certainly this approach is very encouraging. It's not always about money. There's a lot of people out there doing things, as you said in the report. And I'm just very, very encouraged. I think when I was working as a community worker back in the noughties, we've always done it. And I think building on the social capital that you've got around the place, people work in all sorts of places, people naturally do it. It's just how you link it all together. And I must admit, this is not a report I expected to ever see, but now you've done it and got everybody linked up together, I think we want to see the activities around it. And some of your workers, I must admit, brilliant resources, doing the sort of thing that I was doing as a worker, admittedly not paid very much, but I just hope this goes on and on and on, and it's a logical thing for the county plan. So you're doing what you say. So no, very much in favour of this, and very much everybody working together, and I commend it. I'm very much in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Councillor Fiona Cross, then the leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I think what I want to get across most of all is that this is really a massively exciting opportunity. So we've not had a strategy come forward like this. It's been talked about that it has been thoroughly considered, and some of us will know, especially as it was scrutinised last January, that we've been waiting on tenterhooks. When's it coming? Because some of us are already very excited. But the big thing for me is to make sure that we really sell this to our communities. That obviously we've already said that we've done this in partnership and built it together with our third sector. But now we need to get those other people that we might not necessarily connect with, not necessarily the leaders of those third sector organisations, engaged and bought in. And to be able to find those community leaders that we can invest in and develop so we can get that message out. So, you know, as community leaders yourselves, as elected members, I would really urge you all to be able to really sell this to our communities and bring them in, please. I am massively supportive of it. This has been going on for obviously a lot longer for myself than some of you. We do have an impressive and inspirational community spirit out there. We saw it during the pandemic, and it still continues now. So I'm really proud that this is a coordinated, well thought out, measured, considered report that's been presented to you today. So I do hope that you all support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Leader? Councillor Daniels, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, it's just to build on what Fiona was saying, it's a massively ambitious strategy, but it's an absolutely necessary one. I think a bit of context about where how we've arrived here. You know, we have undergone massive divestment from public services for the past decade and more. And what that's done is that's revealed deficiencies in the way we've been doing things, but also strengths, as we've been talking about, you know, in public volunteering and public community spirit. So I think this is a corrective to those years because, you know, whilst we might potentially be having a change of government, the taps won't necessarily get turned on to the degree that we need immediately. So this sort of approach is still as relevant as ever. So it's massively welcome. It's massively ambitious, but it's also never a better time than now, really. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Daniels. Leader?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'd like to really welcome this. I'm usually something of a cynic when it comes to strategies. I think if there's Olympic sport of having strategies, Wales will win the gold quite often. What really matters with any strategy is that it's implemented into action, because a strategy in of itself doesn't change anyone's life, doesn't change any community's life. But I really think this is a strong basis and is reflected in the actions that we're taking as a council and the core of what we are as a council, especially in the last sort of 2 years. So I'd like to thank Stephen, Fiona, Dave and Beth for their leadership on this. I think the language in the paper is important. The words that shine through, resilience, enablement, connecting. We saw the community connectors that we've got at the Congress Theatre the week before last and how they're getting into communities and working with people on a sort of a hyper-local basis. And I think that's you know, a great future potential strength. Partnership with groups of volunteers, that's a great strength of our community. And that's something that we've been trying to tap into, and I think that's really really worthwhile. Also, the theory of early intervention and prevention. recognising that we need to act to stem demand in our acute services. We can't just keep building in more supply to those acute services more and more, because that's unsustainable. Also, I think that early intervention prevention results in better outcomes for people, as well as better financial sustainability for public services. I say that because that's not always easy in the current financial context. Very often we've seen across the UK councils retrench to statutory services, to providing money for those acute services, and getting rid of a lot of those services that provide early intervention and prevention in all but name. I think we tried to avoid those false economies, to invest in those early intervention prevention services. Our play service is just one of them, for example, that might not be statutorily obligatory for us as a council, but provide outcomes that stem demand on those services and improve lives well over and above the amount of money that they cost, in my opinion. I think it's about mindset as well as a public service. I think we need to move away from the idea that we're always the superhero, that we're always the person to fly in on the cape and solve people's problems for them. It's much better that we work with people to build resilience. I guess the classic example is the doctor. We're encouraging doctors not just to give out pills to patients, but to explore their wider lifestyle and well-being, rather than just a doctor knows best sort of approach, working with the patient to help improve their health and well-being. I think it's talking about sort of strength-based analysis as well, just as with a person, looking to the strengths and what they can do, not just a person or a community what they can't do, and trying to build on those strengths and work with them as that catalyst to try and get better outcomes for our communities. So I really welcome this paper. I think it does pass the strategy test of being something that's being shown through in the actions that we take on the ground, and that's always the key test for me. So I'd like to, I look forward to this continuing, and for this to be a whole council approach. I think every part of the council needs to adopt this mindset. What can we do to help empower people, to help get them back on their feet if they need our help, rather than just sort of rely on that sort of teat of dependence, because that, I think, is something that's both better for people and more sustainable for us as a public service organisation.
Thank you, Leader. That takes us to the recommendations, which are on page... Councillor Malson.
Thank you, Rose. I fully support this report, and as the leader has just mentioned now about health and well-being within our communities, I have volunteers that work with me and have done my longest for 9 years, and this person suffers with extreme mental health. But coming out, being a volunteer, helps her mind. I have now taken on a person with additional learning needs. Through COVID, he never came out from the door. Now he's with a support worker once a week, every week for me. He sorts out my DVDs, my books. He has the courage now to go out onto the shop floor, take the old stock off, put the new stock on. He walks in, he says, "Morning, Sue. Morning, Cher." When he first came in, he had his head down. He had no confidence. Now every week he comes in to me and he's beaming. So yes, I encourage this report, but I also got to mention that mental health is a disability that's not seen. You don't know what's going on in that person's head. You really don't. And I'm a sufferer. Lots of us are, and it's important that we talk. And with my volunteers, I encourage them to talk. And that's the way they get through. They make their day, they can do voluntary work, which they absolutely enjoy. Another thing that I think we should be looking at is discrimination. Recently had a meeting with a group of children that are in school and wanted to go into retail. And because of the fact of where they come from, there weren't voluntary positions for them. So I have decided now for them to get into retail. Once they leave school, they come and volunteer with me, gain customer services, go through Job Growth Wales, and then go on further on to retail that they wish to do. So we need to be looking down this field as well of other groups that might be discriminated against. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malcolm, and I'd like to put it on record of all our voluntary groups within the borough. They do such a tremendous job encouraging volunteers to come back into the workplace. So thank you. I've got another hand up, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. The most important thing as well, that us as elected members, a lot of us are volunteers in our communities. You know, even helping on, you know, community venues, community engagements. So we are, you know, volunteers as well. People need to realise we're not just elected members, we're there to represent the residents. But this strategy is excellent for me because it's able to signpost people more to more services. You know, we're able to link things in when people are most at the lowest ebb, you know, and they need that additional support. So this is tremendous for me. And like I said, as part of the county plan, it works well. And I think all the more the better for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Thank you for the report, Beth. And that takes us to the recommendations on page 100 at 8.1. Can I ask members if they agree with the recommendations, please? Anyone against the recommendations? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much, members. That takes us to agenda item 11, which is the A472 Canal Bridge repair options on page 135 of your agenda. Mark Thomas, Deputy Directors, Highways and Climate Change. Welcome to your first council meeting, I believe. So, could you deliver the report, please?
Good morning, members. I'll take you through a brief summary of the report in front of you, which is the A472 Canal Bridge repair options. Key messages, really, in terms of the report, just to firstly explain where the bridge is. It's located on the A472 dual carriageway approaching Pontypool, approximately 300 metres northwest of the A4042 and A472 Pontypool roundabout. It carries the A472 dual carriageway over the Monmouth and Brecon Canal and towpath. The A472 is a critical link in and out of Pontypool, as you would appreciate, and it's a principal cross-valley route carrying circa 35,000 vehicles a day, so it's a major arterial route in terms of Torfaen. Repairs are required to strengthen the bridge, which underpins the key distributor route, as I've explained. The original planned repair has increased in scope and scale due to current condition of the asset. I think it's probably pertinent to explain at this point the reason why the structure has deteriorated, and it's the salts within the carriageway mixed in with surface water percolating down through gaps in the expansion joints. When that makes contact with the reinforced concrete structure, that turns into hydrochloric acid, which attacks the concrete and obviously the steel reinforcement within that reinforced concrete structure, and that then impairs its sort of performance in terms of its ability to take tensile loading. So that's the rationale behind what we're trying to address here. Approval is sought to agree the repair method and fund additional costs associated with that, obviously the preferred repair method, which I'll explain in a minute. We're confident that will provide a long-term resolution to that problem. So in November 2022, the structure was reviewed, assessed, with a revised set of repair options determined. It's clear from the report, as you can see, we're very clear on trying to minimise the financial burden on the authority. And so a whole range of options were considered. Even, do we actually have to do anything to this bridge? Can we just limp along? But it's clear that in order to maintain that main arterial route and enjoy that access that we do, into Pontypool from the south and vice versa, we have to repair that bridge. Otherwise, sooner or later, within recent years, we will have to at least lower the load restriction on that bridge and ultimately deny access across that bridge. So it's quite a significant issue at the moment to us. We've looked at possible options in terms of propping the bridge as well, but that really doesn't get away from the fact that we need to do something significant to ensure the longevity of that key piece of infrastructure for Torfaen. You'll note there's two options, options C and D. They're very, very similar, to be honest with you, in terms of putting in anodes into the structure, which will act as a sacrificial element in terms of taking on that contaminated chloride within the structure and then protecting the replaced steel. However, we feel that the final option, which is the impressed current cathodic protection, offers, while slightly more expensive initially, it offers better value across the lifespan of that structure, needing less intervention. You'll see the costs in front of you in terms of the report. Just to emphasise, within those cost estimates is a contingency sum of 25% as well. So we're trying our best to try and protect the authority in terms of going forward for any further financial demand upon it. We've tried to marshal our existing budgets, knowing that we need to address this issue, and therefore there's a request for a release of additional £407,000 of capital funding. Again, within that £407,000 is the 25% contingency. There are risks associated with this project. Two of the risks that we have, I suppose, are the expected cost and delivery timeframes could be impacted by the availability of contractors and materials. As you know, material prices particularly have risen significantly over recent years. So we've used consultants to provide their best estimate and forecast, but that is a risk. Process is to agree third-party access. As you know, the Canal and River Trusts are responsible for that part of the canal, so we have to work very closely with them as well to determine proper access and timing of our programme of works. To give you some surety, though, the project does form part of the Council's Project Management Office monitoring and reporting process. Risks are recorded, monitored and escalated for resolution as needed throughout that process. So as the project, if we do get permission for additional funding, as the project proceeds, it'll be closely monitored with risks being closely assessed and addressed as we go forward. So that really concludes my summary of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions to Mark on that report? No. That takes us to the recommendations that start on page 138 of the report. Can I ask members whether they agree with those recommendations? Anyone against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you very much, Mark. Agenda item 12, the changes to Executive Member and Scrutiny Committee portfolios on page 141 of the agenda. Leader, could you deliver the report for us, please? And Tom is here to follow through.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I think the idea is that I deliver part one of the report about the Exec Member portfolios and then hand over to Tom to deliver part two of the report. This is something I try and do every year. I try and look at my analysis of the priority areas and the need for political oversight within the Council and assign Executive Member portfolios accordingly. I think it's best to do this before the AGM so that members then know who they're appointing to what positions when they vote on Cabinet. Really the key paragraph is 4.1 within the report there. I propose the new Cabinet will comprise of the following. There's the same number of executive members. Obviously, the Deputy Leader of the Council will continue to hold one of the executive member portfolios outlined below, but that the portfolios be, firstly, children, families and education, secondly, corporate governance and resources, thirdly, adult services and housing, fourth, exec member for economy, skills and regeneration, then exec member for environment, then exec member for waste and sustainability, and executive member for communities. The most substantive change there, I guess, is within the environment and neighbourhood services area, where I think that this will enable sort of greater political oversight and capacity with regards to the challenges that we faced around waste and sustainability, driving up our recycling rates, encouraging that reduce, reuse, recycle message, and also addressing the key existential threat of climate change. How do we respond to that as a council? How do we tackle the threat of climate change and loss of biodiversity best as a council area? Of course, this comes with my usual reminder that those exact members aren't there to run those departments. That's the job of the chief officers and directors. Their job is to give oversight for those areas and to act as that first point of oversight and to present to council as well. So I believe this reflects the best balance for the forthcoming year and gives us the capacity in those real key areas that we need to address going forwards.
Thank you, Leader. The recommendations start on page 144 of the report. And no, we've got yours, agenda item 13. I'll bring you in then. Okay? The education overview. Oh, no. Apologies. I'm getting confused with two Tom Roberts. Tom, would you like to come in first?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member, and good morning, members. As set out in the report, our existing scrutiny portfolios have largely remained the same since the end of 2020. Since that time, the organisation has been through significant change, including a new council, a new county plan and restructured leadership team based around 4 directorates, aligning the services Torvine delivers in a different way across the council. We have therefore looked to renew our scrutiny committees, developing a proposal to council based around committee portfolios that broadly align with the council's strategic leadership, aimed at creating clearer lines of accountability for each scrutiny committee, whilst further strengthening the council's golden thread. Proposals are set out in detail in Appendix 2. However, whilst corporate structures have brought children, services and education under a single strategic director, it is felt that at the current time, education should remain as a single standalone committee dedicated to educational and school-based matters. Therefore, we are proposing to create 5 committees, namely Children and Families, Education, Adults and Communities, Economy and Environment, and finally Cross-Cutting Resources and Business. The proposal maintains membership of each committee at 9 members, with Cross-Cutting Resources and Business Committee continuing to consist of all non-executive members. In line with these revised portfolios, the Adults and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be designated as the Crime and Disorder Committee, which was previously Prosperous Communities ONS Committee. If proposals are endorsed, members would then be appointed to the newly aligned committees at the annual council meeting in May 2024. Scrutiny committees would adopt their revised portfolios following annual council. I'll hand back to the Chair at that point, and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. My apologies. I had you down for education next agenda item as well. So, any questions on that? Can't see any. So, the recommendations start on page 144 of the report. Can I ask members whether you agree with the recommendations? Are there any members against the recommendations? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you very much. That takes us to agenda item 13, the Education Overview and Scrutiny Committee, the appointment of a statutory co-optees, which starts on page 163. Thank you, Tom. Tom Roberts, Business and Support Services Manager, could you deliver this report for us, please?
Thank you again. As members are aware, the Council's Education Overview and Scrutiny Committee has provision for 5 statutory co-optee positions. We received a nomination from the Archdiocese for the vacant Catholic Church representative, a position that has been vacant for some time. It is the responsibility for full council to make appointments to committees, including appointments to fill our co-optee vacancies. The recommendation set out in Section 7 of the report, therefore, is to appoint Mr Cunningham to this vacant position. I'll hand back to the Chair at that point. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions on this? Can I just say we've waited a long time to fulfil the committee structure for education, and there are still spaces remaining for secondary school and primary school governors. So thank you for that, Tom. No questions. That takes us to the recommendations which start on page 164 of the report. Can I ask members whether they're in agreement with the recommendations, please? Are there anybody against those recommendations? And any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much, Tom. We've already dealt with agenda item 14 earlier in the agenda. It takes us to agenda item 15, which is the members' question time. There are 4 questions today. Can I ask the first question from Councillor Janet Jones, please? Okay.
More and more people these days are suffering from stress, anxiety, PTSD, and using service dogs or emotionally supported dogs to help them combat their health issues. How confident are we as a council that our staff, officers within our facilities, are aware that residents using these dogs have the same rights as those with guide dogs, and that all disabilities cannot necessarily be seen?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Peter Jones, you're going to answer that?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your question. Service dogs, also referred to as assistance dogs, are typically highly trained to support a person who has a prescribed disability with their day-to-day activities. We have a legal obligation, as described in the Equality Act 2010, to allow an assistance dog to accompany an individual within our buildings and offices. As these dogs are usually well-trained and well-behaved, they are unlikely to create a problem or nuisance. They are often easily identified by their harness or jacket. We also have an obligation under the same legislation to make reasonable adjustments to accommodate people with disabilities, and this would include providing access for assistance dogs. Our staff are well aware of these matters and would be expected to abide by the legislation. I know that you are referring to emotional support dogs in your question rather than the assistance dogs that I've described. These are typically pets that provide emotional support to their owner and are often untrained. They are therefore more likely to create a problem or nuisance or display poor behaviour if allowed into our offices or buildings. Unlike assistance dogs, emotional support dogs are not defined in the UK law, and the Council are not legally required to allow them to accompany individuals into our offices and buildings unless, and this is an important unless, the individual has a disability as defined by the Equality Act 2010. The conditions that you describe in your question are not necessarily covered by the legislation. Whilst we are unable to provide access to emotional support dogs within our offices and buildings, we have provided dog tie points immediately outside of the Civic Centre doors so that visitors with emotional support dogs can stay reasonably close by whilst conducting their business at reception.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. One question, a supplementary. Can we do more to help these people, please?
I think, Janet, that from a council perspective, the important thing is that we comply with all the legislation, and I'm confident that we are doing that. I think that if there are individual cases that you want to discuss with me, I'd always be happy to discuss them, because as a council, we will always try to mitigate and help our residents. What I can also do, Janet, just to give you a little bit of background, our equality officer has sent me detailed guidance that's available in the public domain on this issue. I'll send that to you so you can study that in greater detail. And if you'd like to have further discussions with me about this topic, I'm always available.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you both. Councillor David Thomas, question 2, please.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Prior to the canal strategy being published in 2023, the canal coordinator Acknowledge that restoring the canal to the basin south of Greenhill Road will require the restoration of the privately owned section of canal which has been culverted under the Lockkeeper's Cottage. Could the executive member describe the options available to the council to resolve the ownership issue and assure members that this issue will not derail the council's ambition to restore the canal to navigation by 2033?
Councillor Thomas. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you for your question, Councillor Thomas. So the canal strategy is a long-term strategy which is ambitious and has been developed with an awareness of the challenges ahead, including water abstraction, licence fees to NRW funding, and of course where the canal has been culverted or infilled. The strategy is a living document to be reviewed annually or if a new challenge becomes apparent. At the moment, we're not facing any new challenges. In general terms, the canal strategy has 3 phases of work, each of which move us closer towards restoring navigation into Cwmbran Town Centre and beyond. In line with the strategy, the current focus for officers is on increasing the vibrancy and boat traffic to Five Locks Basin. This would significantly strengthen the case for investment to extend navigation to Mount Pleasant Road and onwards. Officers are working closely with Bridge 46 and to Five Locks Group and the other group canal groups to deliver this first phase. These volunteer groups have already done some exceptional work in clearing, in maintaining and promoting the canal in the area, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them for their hard work. The second and particularly third phase of the strategy includes several blockages where the canal line or lock infrastructure has been culverted, passes under a road or has been infilled, such as in the land in vicinity of Greenhill Road. Each blockage will require unique technical design to bring it back into water, and once we know the most appropriate technical solution, we will have a clearer picture of how much land is required at each site. The strategy contains an action point to consider ownership at this time.
Councillor Thomas.
Thank you for that, Madam Presiding Member. So if we lose the lock keepers, if that goes, what options are available to make sure that the canal will open by 2033?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thomas. I can't see that there'll be a change. The land that isn't in our ownership would remain not in our ownership. And as I set out earlier, once we've got more clarity on the technical solutions, then we can bring the options to members to look at the solution of any blockage on the canal.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, you've got question 3, please.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. On the 1st of March, the parents of children transitioning from primary to secondary education received notification of the school to where their children had been allocated. Each and every parent who had requested Cwmbran High School was successful with their choice, irrespective of whether they lived within the catchment area or not. At the same time, 53 children whose parents requested Crossy-Killiard Comprehensive School were refused, despite 5 of those children living within Crossy-Killiard's catchment area and 11 having an older sibling attending the school. Crossy-Killiard Comprehensive School opened as recently as 2020, and both Llantarnam and parts of South Sebastopol are within the school's catchment area. The question is, why wasn't Crossy-Killiard built with sufficient capacity to accommodate the ever-increasing number of pupils within its catchment area?
Councillor Richard Clark.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you, Councillor Thomas, for your question. The capacity for the new Crossy-Killiard School was calculated in 2016 using a standard approach to pupil projections. It took into account existing pupils on roll, live birth data, known housing growth, and in and out of catchment area pupil data. The school had a history of taking large numbers of pupils from other school catchment areas, and in 2016 this represented 36% of pupils on roll. One of the Council's agreed objectives in the 21st Century School programme was to have the right size school in the right place. The detrimental effects of taking a large number of pupils from other schools' catchment areas include large number of surplus places in other schools, which in turn leads to those schools having financial problems, and increased car journeys across the borough, whereas pupils can walk to their catchment school in most cases. It was also a condition of capital investment from Welsh Government that Torfaen reduced its number of secondary school surplus places, which were high at the time. Using the available data, it was therefore calculated and decided to set the capacity of the new school to be 1,200, to focus on those pupils projected to be living in the catchment area and to reduce the number of surplus places across the borough overall. Current projections indicate that the school is of the correct size, albeit that we will need to keep that under review as the revised local development plan is in progress, and officers are in regular discussions with that team to review the future demand.
Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Just a quick supplementary question. People move into the new area will obviously take their children's education into account and will probably check their child's prospective school catchment area. What advice would the executive member give to prospective purchasers of properties within the Crossy-Keilor catchment area, given that it seems that residing within a catchment area is no guarantee that your child will actually be allocated to the school?
Well, my first advice is come anyway, because they've got two very good elected members for Crossy-Keilor, but I would say that, of course. Secondly, I would say to all parents, not ones just moving into Crossy-Keilor, another catchment area, to be mindful of the Parents and Carers Information Guide, which sets out the criteria for admissions into school and the dates. Obviously, comply with the dates because that's a key factor. And I would suggest that all people applying have a backstop as well. I understand that some people only apply for the one school and find themselves in an invidious position that if they are turned down for that school, they're possibly too late for their second or third choice school they're in. So, information guide, more than one suggested schools chose, and then the proof that they are actually, I think you and I have been copied into correspondence where somebody alleges somebody said that they were moving into the catchment area and that never came to fruition. I think that one individual actually could prove exchange of contract details, etc., etc., to have all that information to evidence their application, if that helps.
Thank you. That takes us to question 4.
Sorry, Madam Presiding Member, I've got one more question. I'm afraid. Sorry.
Yeah. Is it question 4 or is it a supplementary to question 3?
No, it's question 4. I can't have another supplementary, can I? If I could, that would be easy.
Thank you. That's what I was calling you in for.
On the 21st of March, the Argus reported that Cwmbran High School was to remain in special measures because Estyn judged that it had made insufficient progress in relation to the recommendations following its most recent core inspection in 2015. However, the Argus article went on to quote that the Council's Director of Education as saying that, quote, "I'm really pleased with the feedback from Estyn. It's really clear the school is making appropriate progress. I'm really encouraged by that," end of quote. Could the executive member please explain how Estyn's use of phrase insufficient progress can be translated by the Council to mean appropriate progress, particularly given the length of time involved?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Insufficient progress judgment by Estyn relates to all recommendations in order to remove the school from special measures. Whilst the school has been in category for an extended period of time, it has only been recently that the substantive leadership has been in place and the governing body re-established, replacing an interim executive board which had been in place for a number of years. Therefore, the comments of the Director of Education related to the period since the new head teacher and deputy head teacher, and indeed himself, had been in post, There is much still to do, but the report by Eston highlights the progress that has recently been made, and I myself have brought those to you when I've made presentations to full council. It is interesting to note, and why the director said what he said, the comments by Eston wider in the report, and I'll just outline 4 key areas of that. First, the head teacher is leading these schools strategically and steadily through a systematic process of improvement. He has worked with the school community to refine the vision of the school so the ambition to strive, achieve and believe, their motto, is well understood and shared by all, and the work of the school is underpinned by clear values. Secondly, working closely with the senior team, the head teacher is managing change carefully, creating an atmosphere of trust and collaboration where processes are transparent and fair. There is now a sense of stability which is helping staff to remain positive and enthusiastic about further improvement. Thirdly, recently the school has taken a range of appropriate actions to strengthen this aspect of its work, including new appointments to senior and middle leadership roles. Leaders have refined whole school approaches so that they are more strategic and coherent. As a result, staff now have a much clearer understanding of their role in developing pupil skills alongside their subject knowledge and understanding. And the fourth point I take from Eston is that the school has sensibly streamlined its approaches to improving the quality of teaching to ensure there is clear focus on those school aspects most in need of development. Now, I think that is a great improvement, and as the director said, it's really clear the school is making appropriate progress, and not only the director, I'm encouraged by that, as I've reported back to members at previous council meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Thomas, you have a supplementary?
Unfortunately, I do, Madam Presiding Member. Thank you for that. So with that being said then, Councillor Clark, could I ask if you are confident that Cumbraen High School will come out with special measures by the end of this year?
I'm confident that we are working to that goal. I'll never predict what Eston said, otherwise we wouldn't have been in the circumstances as an authority 2 years ago. I'm confident that we're working to that goal, and the evidence that's before me at the present moment shows that the school is well on progress to come out of special measures, but that's a determination for Eston, not me.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. That takes us to agenda item 16, which is the Cabinet decisions of the 20th of February 2024. Cabinet decisions start on page 167 and are for the Council to note. There were no challenges to any of the decisions. Any comments on the Cabinet notes? Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendation to note the Cabinet minutes? Are there any members against the recommendations? Any abstentions? Cabinet decisions are noted. Thank you very much. Takes us to the date and the time of the next meeting. For your information, members, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 14th of May at 10 a.m. and it will be the Council APM. Thank members for attendance at the meeting and officers this morning. Thank you very much. Have a good day.